Hey everybody, this is Curtis from PSNStores.com. Today we're going to take a look at the Brookhaven Experiment. So we're doing post commentary on this one. I just recorded a quick playthrough of a survival mode match, and so there's a few things I want to say about this game. One, I think on your first the first time you play this, it is a survival horror game. You basically you're stationary in one position. This is a game that was out on like the Vive earlier this year, and you could just turn around. It had full like 360-degree tracking, so you could like turn around, and you would have zombies and different monsters coming at you from all different sides. And kind of part of the fun, I would imagine, would be the fact that you were able to turn around completely, and just shoot in whatever angle you wanted to. And on PlayStation VR, obviously, because of certain tracking issues, like with the Move controllers, that's not entirely possible. You can kind of get away with it in a couple instances, but it's just not gonna happen. So what they've done with this game is they've added the circle button on the left Move controller. And what that does is that rotates you 180 degrees just by pressing that button. So what you get, and I guess kind of the intended way to play this would be staring forward, kind of looking to your sides, and then to turn around, you would just hit the circle button, and then you could see behind you, or what would then be in front of you, and then look to the sides and kind of keep switching back and forth perspectives. And that works pretty well. I do think, this is the only version of this game I played, but the whole time I kept thinking, man, I bet this is super cool when I don't have to worry about just hitting a button to turn. Like, it still works, and I still think some of the effect comes across pretty well in PlayStation VR, where, like, again, the first time you play this, it's very tense, very stressful. Like, there are jump scares that maybe aren't necessarily intended to be jump scares, but they're gonna get you. Like, you're gonna have times where you turn around and there is a zombie right up on your face, or like this huge hulking beast like right in front, like charging right at you, and it's gonna freak you out. First couple times I played this, I about fell to my knees because I was not expecting to see this huge thing, like huge monster, just like right in my face, ready to tear me apart. You don't really get prepared for that, and especially because this game really does have a pretty good sense of presence. I don't think it's like a particularly great looking game, in any respects, but like it doesn't matter. Like the moment you put this headset on, like all bets are off. Essentially, like that, none of that matters. It there is a sense of presence there that works pretty well to its advantage for sure. Um, so a few things to know. So this is a survival mode. Basically, what this is, they give you a few different maps, and you start with pretty like a very basic gun. And then after each wave, you get like points, and you can use those points to spend on new guns. You can buy upgrades to your guns. You can buy different little charms. You can buy alternate, like you can buy like grenades or landmines, things like that. And then of course you can then spend any leftover money to refill your health gauge, refill your ammo, things like that. And you just keep going, and the waves get tougher, and then harder enemies, show up with every progressing wave, and you just kind of keep going until you die, and you're trying to get the highest score possible. You're ranked on like your accuracy, how much damage you take, different things like that, and it's pretty cool. Like I think this is probably the reason to play this game. There is a campaign, but like this is probably where you're gonna get the most fun out of it, I would imagine. The level we're seeing right here is like this sewer, which I think is works pretty well to have just to make a pretty like scary, very dark environment, very tense again, and so it's cool in that respect. The campaign is, I believe it's like 10 stages long. I'm only on the fourth stage. I'm kind of very slowly progressing through, and with every level, I'm kind of losing any will to continue forward because I'm kind of starting to lose any sort of enjoyment, really, at least for the campaign. The way it's set up is basically a campaign, again, is a series of waves that you need to survive. So the first level is like 2 or 3 waves, second level is 3, third level is 4, so on and so forth. And again, all of them you're just kind of stationary. The second level is like in a park, so it's wide open. The first level there's only like 2 or 3 areas monsters can come at you from. The third levels there's 4, and so like every level kind of presents a different layout. Sometimes you're inside, sometimes you're outside, and what that does is it makes you really think about where you are, like what the location is that you're in, because that's going to determine what angles different monsters can come at you from. So you've got to always kind of be on your toes and be on the lookout, and that's really cool. And I do think there's something to be said for that. I think this game is really really good for like if you just have someone come over and it's like, hey, you should check out this VR thing. Let's play this Brookhaven Experiment. It's gonna freak you out, because it probably will. Like absolutely. Like I think I've kind of maybe lost a little bit of that the more and more I play it, just because I'm kind of growing accustomed to it now. That effect is kind of starting to be lost like as I play more and more of this. But what is happening is, and I don't know necessarily if you're going to really see it in this video, I think I've noticed in capturing PlayStation VR or just VR stuff in general, is you lose a sense of depth, but there's also like, there's a lot of things you kind of lose just watching this video. So I don't know how well it's going to be portrayed. There are 2 ways I want to go about this, because I haven't quite nailed down exactly the best way to describe what I'm experiencing with this game in regards to the aiming. So for one, you'll probably see it a couple instances in this video. The move tracking is okay. There are times where it gets pretty bad. Specifically it's when if I'm standing and looking straight forward and I look all the way to my right or all the way to my left, and I try to aim in that direction, typically that's when my move controller starts really acting up, and like the gun will just straight up, like as I'm like holding it still trying to shoot at an enemy coming at me, the gun will start moving back and forth and kind of moving like just enough to where I feel like it is probably affecting where I am aiming and whether or not I'm actually able to hit anything. And what I've noticed, and it was immediately apparent, and then I felt like I got better, and then I felt like I got worse, is I feel like it's one of 2 things. One, the only time I've ever fired any sort of gun was when I was younger. We had a BB gun. And we shot like soda cans at like my dad's. We went to my dad's buddy's house to visit him. It was an old Navy buddy. They lived on a farm, so we just set up a bunch of soda cans. They had a BB gun, and I was younger then. It had been a long time. That's the only experience I've had outside of like arcades where you're playing like Time Crisis or something. But that that's not really the real thing. And not to say that this is a perfect replication of that, but what I think it does is, so there's like a recoil on these guns. There's clearly like they're trying to approximate kind of what it would feel like. And I think sometimes what I want to do is I want to hold the move controller up so that the gun's kind of like in a good like eyesight, like line of sight with like where I'm looking, and so that I can kind of look and then like just kind of look down the barrel of the gun and shoot. And that doesn't really work. There are numerous times, especially throughout the campaign, where I feel like I am aiming right at an enemy and it's just not hitting. Sometimes it does, but like a lot of my shots are just missing, and I don't know if that's like the recoil, even on just these like kind of tiny revolvers. Like there is clearly a little bit of a recoil. There's a little bit of bounce back, which is even weirder because you don't feel it in VR because you're holding a move controller. So that's weird enough as it is, especially with some of like the miniguns that are like a pretty heavy recoil. But regardless, I think there's kind of 2 sides to this. I think one is I don't have a lot of experience shooting a gun. I just don't. I did it once in my life and that was it, and I was younger, and I just don't. I don't really have any interest either. But the point is, because I don't, I have a feeling that there is a little bit of that where it is different from playing a shooter on just a DualShock 4 or even like a mouse and keyboard. There is something very, very different in this case. And I think that might be playing a little bit of an effect on here. I think the other thing is just the move controller tracking is not great. And I think that's also having an impact. I don't know how much it is. I've played this game in two different settings. One which worked pretty well. The other was a bit more wide open, and that seemed to work just as well. I don't think I noticed anything inherently different or inherently better about it. Uh, but it's a weird thing of like, I feel like the tracking is working okay. You know, there are a couple instances again where I see the gun kind of float a little more than you would want it to. But as far when it comes to like shooting at zombies or shooting at kind of even some bigger enemies kind of charging at you, there are moments where I think I don't understand. I don't know what exactly it is I'm doing wrong, because it feels like, or not, it feels like I see where I'm aiming. Like, you know, I don't have like a reticle or anything. I don't have like I don't have anything that is directly showing me specifically where my gun is pointed, but like I see it visually, and I can perceive like the depth there. You know, I see, at least in VR, what appears to be me aiming directly at any given zombie that's coming at me, but I'm not hitting them, and that kind of is confusing me, and it's, in a way, it's making me a little frustrated. And again, I think there's two sides to it. I think there is an inexperience of, maybe if I just kept at this game more and more, eventually I would start to get a little better. And I feel like I have improved a little bit since I first started playing. But some of that is also just kind of compensating and knowing that I have to kind of change the way that I thought that I would aim. Um, and then I also think there's just a tracking issue in general, whereas the Move controllers are not as good as certain other VR controls, like with the Vive. And the other thing, it's like there's also, you know, obviously you will see zombies that are far off initially, and sometimes I'll miss them, sometimes I'll be able to hit them, sometimes I'll miss them, and that I'm a little bit more lenient on. Like, that's like, well, okay, like they're super far off, like obviously it's gonna be a little harder. But, and I don't know how much you'll see it in this video, but like there have definitely been times where there has been a zombie pretty close up to me, and I've still, like, even though I feel like I'm aiming right at it, it's not connecting, and that's kind of weird. But other than that, so you do have a flashlight. The flashlight you can switch out for a knife, which works really well. Like if a zombie's up close on you, you can just melee them, so you're not wasting ammo, which sometimes I forget to do. You've got a grenade, you've got mines, you've got things that you can basically throw. You've got there's like a flash grenade, there's a flare. That stuff is interesting. Like I like it. I think it takes a little getting used to as far as throwing is concerned. The way that you would probably want to throw normally is not going to work very well. In this case, you've got to kind of get used to it. I think with the mines, I almost do like an underhand throw just to get it a little bit farther from me, but still like in a pretty decent position. The grenades, I've kind of grown accustomed to. I can't quite get them exactly where I want them to go. But their blast radius is so big that as long as I get kind of close, it still works pretty well. The flashlight's pretty cool. I mean, again, like most of the environments that you're going to be in are pretty dark, and so having that flashlight and having to conserve your battery is a cool mechanic, and it works. And especially like when you run out of that your battery, like you start freaking out a little bit. There is an add-on you can get for your weapon that puts like a little mini flashlight on there. It's not nearly as powerful, but it doesn't have a battery, so that does help. One other thing that I do want to mention, that I don't really like, specifically with the campaign. So campaigns are wave based. In the instance of like level 3, right, there are 4 waves. If you make it all the way to wave 4, and let's say you get like right up at the end of wave 4, right, there's some big enemies coming at you. You run out of ammo, and then you die. So one, you have to restart that level from wave 1, which isn't too bad. The levels can maybe get, I don't know, about 10 to 15 minutes long, maybe a little bit longer, at least from what I've played so far. What sucks is your ammo and all that stuff doesn't refill when you restart the level. So if you died on like level 3 because you ran out of ammo, if you go to restart, you should be careful because you're not gonna have that ammo. Like it's still gonna be gone, um, and that sucks. And so I don't know if the game expects you to just restart from a prior level and build up your ammo supply again, because it does carry over level to level. Or like I guess you can like exit the game and then reopen and hopefully it should refill. It's just a weird thing. It's a really strange thing, and it's just one of those things. Like the more and more I play it, the campaign, like specifically, I'm just not really. I'm kind of losing interest in wanting to play anymore. Like I guess there's a story. There's like some voiceover through like a radio that you're getting from this woman who's like kind of explaining where you should go, and there's hints of like an experiment gone awry, and actually one of the one of my favorite things about this is in some levels you'll hear like just huge like thuds off in the distance, and if you look out like as far as you can see, you see like this Cloverfield-esque monster just like hawking in the background. It looks awesome. It's super cool. I don't know if you'll ever necessarily come into contact with that. I would guess that maybe in like some of the last levels you might, but it's like always there. Like even in the title, like in the menu selection, like it's in the background. Very, very cool. Big fan of that. Um, but yeah, just like the progression in the campaign, like the fact that like I don't necessarily mind having to restart from wave one. It does kind of suck if you get to the final wave and then die, especially if you run out of ammo, and because you're missing. But anyways, it does. It's weird that like when you go to restart, like everything's just gone. And I guess like and it's the thing is like the best way to rebuild your ammo supply would be to go back to like earlier levels and build it up again, because as you play through a stage, if you're doing well in it, you can just get more and more ammo supply, more and more batteries, more and more like grenades and different things like that. And so eventually like you can go into newer like levels farther into the campaign with a pretty good supply of ammunition, which is obviously super helpful. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I guess technically you could probably clear the campaign in a handful of hours, but I don't know how much more I want to play the campaign either. I just not like, it's basically survival mode anyways, with like sort of a story but sort of not. There's just other maps that aren't available in survival mode, and I think I prefer the progression in survival mode more than I do in the campaign. The campaign, you again start off very basic, but every level has like a hidden supply cache, and it's like a glowing crate box that you have to kind of like look around and find, and some of them can be pretty well hidden. But if you hit them, basically you unlock some new thing, and then once you have that unlocked, whether it's a new gun or new add-on or something, you have it forever. Whereas in survival mode, every wave you're earning money to unlock new unlockables, which you unlock a lot faster, and it gives you it's a better way of being able to try out guns pretty quick, compared to the campaign where you might need to get through a series of levels before you really are able to try out like a new gun at all. I think it's like level 3 is the first one that gets you something that's a little bit different than maybe what you're used to. But I don't know. Like I think this is $20 on PlayStation 4. I don't I want to try to do a review. That way I would need to get through the campaign. I'm not really feeling that. So it might be a thing that I just slowly progress through it over the next few weeks or something. But either way, I wanted to get this video out, and I probably will try to at least write impressions up for it or something. I think as like, it's one of those weird things where a lot of these launch VR games are good like showpieces. They're really good at like being, bringing friends over and being like, okay, you've got to check this out for any given reason. Why, right? Like maybe it's like a res or a thumper where it's like, this is so crazy. It's gonna melt your eyes, but you've got to see it for yourself. Super Hypercube is kind of in a similar boat there. Or maybe it's an Until Dawn where it's like, yeah, this is super cool. It's got like a horror element, but it's like being on a roller coaster, and so there's that effect. And so I think this again fits in kind of that horror genre. and also, it's a great time of the year for it. I think if nothing else, my best memory of this game so far, like I've played a handful of hours already into this. My favorite part of it came very, very quick. Like within the first 10 to 15 minutes of playing it, was in that first stage where it was it was like the first jump scare of the game, basically for me, where I heard something to my left, and I looked over, and there was a zombie just like breaking through some boards and like just lunging at me, and I was able to very quickly get a shot off and kill it before it attacked me. And what ended up happening is I fell to my knees basically, just out of shock, because I was not expecting it. And again, like I said earlier in the video, that effect is kind of wore off over time as I play more and more, and I kind of know what to expect now. But if you can get a friend to come over and play this game for the first time, not knowing what to expect, I think you'll have a good time just watching them just freak out for a little bit. And I think that's where the fun is in this game. I think on its own, it's interesting. It's a pretty neat concept. Again, it's something that I think would only work in VR, because outside of VR, it's like, well, why can't you move? Whereas in this case, like, it's interesting, and of course, limited ammo supply and not being able to move. All of that works very well and feeds into the kind of survival horror aspect that this game is going for. And in some cases it works, especially like those first few times that you're playing, it works super well. But I think specifically with the PSVR version, at least, I can only speak for myself, but I think a mixture of tracking issues and maybe some other things, maybe just a lack of experience of even firing a gun in real life, maybe that plays a little bit of a role into it. But I feel like the more and more I play, the more and more I am missing shots where I feel like I am dead on with my aim. And that gets frustrating. And I do think there's at least part of that to be blamed for just the move tracking in general. And that makes it more and more frustrating, and it's more and more the kind of thing where I just don't really want to keep playing it too much. And then again, I talked about this briefly. The last thing I do want to touch on, I love that this game does add the button for the 180-degree spin. As someone who played just a very little bit of Job Simulator, another game that kind of requires you to stand and kind of turn around, that game, you don't necessarily, at least from what I played, you don't necessarily need to turn 360 degrees. But even that game, turning a little bit, it was very apparent how the move tracking could get pretty bad in certain instances. And I think, if nothing else, the big takeaway for me for this game is, if you're going to be on PlayStation VR, and it's going to be a game that you need to stand and you might need to turn a little bit, if not all the way around, and you're using Move controllers, give me that button. Give me the button where I can turn 180 degrees. Does it take a little bit away from it? Yeah, I think so. I think if I'd play this on the Vive, I'd probably get a whole lot more out of it, just because I would be able to turn all the way around. I think you do. I just think you do lose something from that. Maybe it's not a lot. If you played both versions, maybe it's not too bad for you. But to me, I kept thinking, man, I bet this is super cool on the Vive, right? But if you are going to be, if it is a game like this where you're standing up and you have to turn around a little bit, I would love to. I think having that button does this game a huge service. Like, it really, really helps. It makes it so much easier to manage, enemies coming at you from all sorts of directions. There are still problems outside of that, but I think that just is such a huge help, and I really, really appreciate that it is there. So that is the Brookhaven Experiment. Again, it's out now on PlayStation VR for $20. I think it's neat. I don't know if I necessarily recommend it. I think as far as like kind of horror games that are also sort of like shooting galleries, I think I much prefer Until Dawn over this. Until Dawn, of which I hoping to have a video and review up for that pretty soon. Finished that a few nights ago. That's probably the one that I would recommend. I think it's also 20. But Halloween is coming up, just a few days away. This game totally fits into that. This kind of year, it's perfect time of year for it. Again, you get a group of buddies over, and you're all just playing this for the first time, you're gonna freak out. It's gonna be fun watching other people play this, and I think that you can, half of the fun is watching people play VR games. I've come to learn. So with that said, thank you for watching. As always, I will see you next time.